All right. Let's get this ready to roll. It's number 9, right? Yeah, number 9. Stream number 9. Alright, so we are up on the Patreon as well. Okay. I'll include an image just because. Did I not put it in here? Oh, I put it in here. Alright, and now we post to Instagram too. Okay. All right. Got about 2 more minutes. Ah, that's right. I was gonna share it on Discord as well. All right, that's all good. Still got 1 more minute left. Oh wait, did I make this unlisted? Hang on. What are my settings on here? Normal scuff. Ah, I bet that's what it is. Hang on. Public. Publish. Awesome. Okay, now it's public. Okay, now everyone should be seeing that. Of course, it was still set to private from last time. Okay. Well, let's get started on the drawing. The drawing. I'm gonna do these a little bit out of order today because I feel like it. Got a bit of an awkward stare down in these panels. That's a cool dog. Yeah, the coolest dog. Only cool dogs here. I do actually plan to have dogs appear in a later story. I think people are gonna love / hate what I come up with for dogs. Their situation in this world is interesting. I'll just leave it at that. Can it eat chocolate? I don't think cats can eat chocolate, no. I think large quantities of chocolate are toxic for most animals. I mean, I feel like it's especially so for something like cats, because they're obligate carnivores, so meats are kind of the only thing they're really designed to digest. Of course, there's other things that they can consume, and they'll be fine. But I think there's, like, a wider variety of things that they can't eat because of that. Although, don't quote me for certain on that. I'm no cat scientist expert as much as I love them and know a ton of random factoids about them. Chocolate is meat-like? In what way? I don't know if cats can eat cheese, Dart. I am aware that apparently regular pasteurized cow's milk is not very good for their digestion. Don't know about cheese, though. We just had the most recent chapter update go up, and I finished the one I was working on last week So this one is 2 ahead of what's been most recently posted. I'm actually excited to finally be working on this part. This is one of the big backstory moments that the story's been building to. And, you know, I wrote this part of the story out, like, 2 years ago, I think, at this point. So it's definitely fun to be actually getting around to drawing it and seeing it show up on the page. Where's that friggin' reference thing I need? There it is. I swear, I'm gonna have my folders better organized for the next story I do. Because I got kind of everything all over the place here. I need to consolidate my comic folders. So what Pokemon is this? I don't know, actually. What kind of Pokemon would Fern be? My brain's kind of going through all of the vaguely cat-ish Pokemon. I don't know, her name's Fern. Maybe she's a Leafeon. Something vaguely related to nature. I hope everyone had a good week since I was last live and active. Although maybe some of you saw me on Saturday when I was playing Okami. My week's been good, with any hope I'm getting a new job started soon. And then I can start saving away money again for things. And this weekend I'm going to a Little Shop of Horrors performance. So that'll be fun, you know, I like a good stage show. I especially like it because it means my roommate's dad comes to visit and we get a free dinner out of the occasion. See, there's nothing quite like being a young adult and getting offered a free dinner by someone. Like, that's just pure heaven, you know? The gods have smiled upon you. Yes, Seymour. Little Shop of Horrors is actually a story I have not seen before. So I will be interested in, you know, actually getting to experience it. It was one of those things where I grew up seeing all of, like, the parodies of it, or the references that people would make in other media, because the show was, like, you know, so old and so niche that, like, it's not like I had a bunch of opportunities to go see it for myself, be it the stage show or the movie. But I did end up coming across a bunch of stuff that was inspired it that had come out since. So there's some details about the series that I'm aware of just because of that cultural osmosis, but there's also probably a ton about it that I don't understand at all. Or like references that I won't be able to make the connection to until I've actually seen it. So that'll be an interesting experience. Masking layers are an absolute lifesaver. Don't have to worry about coloring outside the lines with these things. Of course, it would be nice to have the sort of masking layers nested within masking layers, you know? Like, I want all of the colors to be on top of the base color layer, but I also want to put specific things like the stripe patterns on only the orange parts. But unfortunately, I can't lock a layer mask specifically to the orange parts without making the orange parts a regular layer instead of a masking layer. I think that should be the next step for this technology, really. If somebody ever, you know, gets it in their mind that that would also be a cool idea. You like the elevator music? Yeah, I kind of just pulled like a 12-hour long copyright-free soothing music playlist off of YouTube. Since I was gonna do these public, I figured, you know, it just made sense to try to keep it off of YouTube's detection bots. Although I have noticed the videos have at least gotten, like, you know, noted as being like, hey, there's, you know, some copyrighted music in here. I imagine from the last time where I was playing people's recommendations on stream. But then it was like, but it's allowed to be used on YouTube, so you're fine. But honestly, the copyright-free playlists haven't been too bad. Sure, it's a little generic, but all I really need is some background tunes while I do the work. Something to fill the dead air when I get into the zone and am too busy drawing to talk all that much. It is surprisingly difficult to draw and talk at the same time. I think it's because drawing requires so much brain activation. The brain can't really string coherent thoughts together while also trying to focus on executing the drawing. Okay. Computer lag for a second. Love it, love that computer lag. Yeah, the amount of layers I usually end up with by the time I finish a comic update, it actually takes a little while for the computer to save it all. Which is kind of funny. The new Cuphead game is fire? I didn't know they were making a new Cuphead game. I guess that makes sense, though. It takes them like a friggin' eternity to make those. Obviously, because, well, the whole thing's hand animated. Like, it's traditional pen on paper and then, you know, plastic cells animation, which is insanely cool, but also insanely time-consuming. And I'm not surprised that trying to create a sequel to the original Cuphead would be kind of hell. I mean, if I'm right, didn't the first game take, like, 10-something years? I want to say it was in production for, like, 10 years. And then the creators, like, mortgaged their houses to help pay for it. Which is some dedication, man. Taking out a second mortgage on your house to be able to fund this game project that you just really believe in with all of your heart. It was a serious risk, but they made it work, because that game looks gorgeous. I'm sure it plays well too, but I actually haven't played it myself. That might be one I put on the list. Another game that's got really good art direction is the Hades games. Which I think most people are familiar with the Hades games to some extent. They've just got a really strong graphic comic book style. And, you know, I applaud it because it's deceptively simple. Like, I tried to do the comic book look myself a few times. It's actually very difficult to know how to effectively use those really dark, black, thick shadows and to, like, actually make it look nice on the drawing. I've also had trouble imitating the manga style too. Once again, like, you'd think black and white monochrome would be easy. It's not. I honestly think it might be just because I don't have enough practice with black and white, you know, single tone colors. It's actually why I put one of my other projects on hold. I had this one comic idea. I've got the script for it written out and everything, and the character designs and stuff too. But I just can't get started on it because no matter how many times I try to start drawing it, it just doesn't look right. I think the design stuff needs a few more, like, concept sketches. I really need to work through what it's supposed to look like. They got considerable funding from John Microsoft. I would expect it. I mean, that's the thing with the creative field. You only really have to prove yourself once. And then, like, you know, people in the industry, they want you. You know? You only gotta sell like hotcake once and they will throw money at you every time after. For a long time. And you can tell because, you know, there are so many creators out there who make one fantastic piece of art and then everything else in their career is just duds for some reason. But they'll still get those spots, you know? They'll still get put into the director's chair and all that jazz. It's honestly a little crazy how that works sometimes. No, they just shut down the studio regardless of its performance? I guess. Or they go nuts? Yeah. The dark end for all creators, I think, is going nuts. Just randomly losing your mind. Oh, I missed a spot here. Hang on. Let's just paint this whole spot in. Yeah, there we go. Okay, I need to pull up my Newborn Fox reference real quick to get these colors right. Okay. Depending on the coloring, it seems like newborn foxes either start pretty dark or pretty light. And then their fur kind of gets more orange. Maybe this to help them blend in better. No Vaporeon? Alas, Vaporeon is a copyrighted character. I don't think I could use that. Your middle school art teacher said all artists are crazy. I guess to some extent. I think it really depends on the artist. Like, I don't think I'm that crazy, but I also think I have kind of an atypical brain for an artist. I'm pretty left-brained. Most artists tend to be pretty right-brained, so they're a lot more intuitive and feeling. And I think that opens you up to being more creative, but it also opens you up to being kind of out of touch with reality sometimes. Or at least open to having very crazy ideas of reality. Alright, we're gonna go with kind of this muddy brownish color, I think. Now we'll lighten that up a little bit here. There we go. It is kind of funny how they start off this very dark brown color. It's interesting. And then they got like these little patches of lighter orangish color. And then a little bit darker brown for those darker markings that they got. I think you could probably see some of the brown markings on Mom here. Let me fix that up. There we go. Leftist brain. I know it's feeding, but also looks like a flock of birds flying away. Yeah, I could see that. Uncensored teats. They're animal teats, man. Can't show people the beauty of nature anymore, jeez. I was kind of a weird kid. I loved watching Animal Planet. I specifically liked some of the kind of fucked up shows that they would air on there. I really loved watching Animal Cops, which was a show about law enforcement in an area who were like a task force who were specifically in charge of investigating animal neglect and abuse cases. And they would visit some terrible locations, like, you know, places where people were hoarding animals, where they were fighting animals, where they were engaging in all kind of, you know, unsavory behavior with animals. And it would sort of show in detail sort of the process of, you know, what state the animals came to the rescuers in, what sort of processes they had to go through to get to recovery, and whether or not they made it, because sometimes they wouldn't. The animals would die on that show, and they'd never, like, show it happening on screen, but they would tell you, you know, after a time skip being like, you know, sadly, the dog didn't make it. You know, they just couldn't save him. He was too far gone. And I remember my sister couldn't bear to watch it because she thought it was just too sad. But, you know, I ate up every second of that series. I was just really enthralled by, I guess, watching the rescuing process in action and how difficult it was. Because oftentimes the hardest part of that show was just getting the people who had done these terrible things arrested. Because this was like, you know, in the 2000s, animal welfare laws weren't like super detailed at the time. So there were like a lot of loopholes and technicalities that, you know, these people used to kind of get off scot-free, and the judges were only able to shrug their shoulders and be like, there's nothing we can really charge them with, it's not on the books. So yeah, I just found shows like that really interesting for some reason. A little more morbid than I think what most kids were watching on Saturday mornings, I think. But it also kind of made it a little easier for me to sort of stare unflinchingly at, you know, the brutality of the world and nature. You know? Like, I see stuff that happens on the news that has everybody else in a panic, and I'm like, yeah, that sucks. But it doesn't, like, I don't take it home with me after I see it, you know? Moving on is a lot easier. And I think that's also why I end up including, you know, more serious or real content in my works, too. Even stuff like this that seems pretty fantastical and maybe like something a kid would watch, you know, it touches on more mature things. A certain Fuhrer... Dude, not here. I mean, I guess it's just further evidence, you know, having one good point in your corner doesn't make you a good person. How much for one? I don't think you can keep these ones. Although I did see an interesting thing about an experiment some people were running where they were trying to make domesticated foxes in an effort to sort of understand the domestication process. Because, you know, back when cavemen were first domesticating dogs, they weren't exactly, you know, taking notes about their process or how it was working. We only really have, like, educated guesses on how they went about domesticating dogs and other farm animals. We don't exactly know the step-by-step process. So these people decided to try to recreate it with foxes. And they were actually decently successful from what I remember. I don't think you could go out and get domesticated foxes, and the foxes aren't, like, completely docile. Because that would take, like, you know, probably hundreds of years to actually get, like, a truly domesticated fox that thrives off human interaction as much as a dog does. Or is as docile as a dog. But they got some decently human-friendly foxes out of it. So I don't know, maybe you can call them up and ask for a fox. I might end up finishing these way ahead of schedule. I think in that case I'll probably start working on a few more panels too. Might as well get ahead of the workflow, if I can. This is actually a decently large update. Like, it's 2 full pages of material for this one. So probably doing a little more than I need to is a good thing anyway. Oh, Finnegan Fox from Save a Fox. Yeah, I like that. Although, Finnegan's not really a domesticated fox, he's what you'd call tame. Which, the difference is, a domesticated animal is specifically bred to be dependent on humans, whereas a tame animal is just one that's really used to human interaction. So, like, they're not fearful of humans the way that most wild animals are. But yeah, I love the Save a Fox YouTube channel. I think animal content is probably one of the biggest genres that I consume in my internet usage. Just because, you know, animal content's usually always nice, you know? It's hard to be mad or get political over a video of some cute foxes running around. Now, people try, of course. You know, you'll always get people commenting under people's videos about their pets, talking about how they're clearly mistreating their animals and don't know how to take care of them, even though you've only seen a 5-second YouTube short. I mean, honestly, I can't imagine thinking so highly of myself that I would assume that I understand the entirety of a person's life from, like, a 5-second video. That's the danger of short-form content, you know? It gives people ideas. They start making assumptions. And then before you know it, everyone's fighting in the comment section over something incredibly stupid. But for the most part, you know, it's just fun animal videos about people taking care of, you know, creatures that can't really fend for themselves in this very human-focused world. Come out. Sheesh. Oh, I put that all in the one layer? Damn it. Okay, whatever, we're gonna roll with it. I don't care, I don't care. I think that's detailed enough. quick stretch. The worst ones are when commenters try to correct the OP on something they're doing but are completely wrong. Yeah. I mean, I think that just goes to show you should never let your ego get ahead of yourself, you know? Never assume that you completely understand what's going on. I find the most vocal critics of animal care are not that much better themselves. Yeah, that's something that I've noticed too. I mean, you know, I'm sure we're all familiar with the habits of PETA. My sister actually had kind of a run-in with them at one point. Not like her herself, but something that she was familiar with got sort of involved with them. Because my sister works in exotic animal care. Specifically, she works for zoos. Right now she's actually working for an animal sanctuary in Raleigh, which is a pretty nice place, although it kind of runs on a shoestring budget, like a lot of those places do. But they usually end up taking in a lot of animals that other places can't look after. And she's, you know, through working there, she's made connections with other people in the industry as well. And one of the sanctuaries recently had an incident with PETA where, or it wasn't directly PETA, it was like one of the off-branching groups that goes under a different name, but they're like funded and connected to PETA, so they're basically PETA. But they basically accused them of having poor animal care in their facilities for specifically their giraffes. So they lobbied to get the giraffes removed. Which, you know, these charges were pretty trumped up already. Like, they took some very unflattering photos of the facility and then tried to twist it to, you know, law enforcement that, you know, this was poor animal care. And, you know, because these judges, these cops, they don't understand anything about it. They took the PETA guys at their word. So they ended up having to relocate the giraffes, but instead of letting the sanctuary do it themselves, the PETA guys stepped in and said, like, no, you can't be trusted with these animals, we're gonna do it ourselves. But their relocation efforts were a complete disaster. Turns out the people they brought in to rehouse the giraffes didn't know anything about giraffes or transporting them at all. They had poorly sized carriers, They didn't even know how to approach the giraffes. There was some really damning footage that the sanctuary caught on their CCTV of one of the PETA guys actually injuring one of the giraffes in their attempts to get him out of the enclosure. Like, they were trying to corner the giraffe by closing off certain gates and leading it into a specific part of the facility. But they weren't doing it correctly, and they ended up closing a gate on the giraffe's leg after the giraffe got startled, tried to run through the gate, and, you know, the PETA guy, I guess acting on complete instinct, just closed the gate as fast as they could, smashed up the giraffe's leg. So that was pretty horrific to see. But she was ranting and raving to me about this, you know, the entire time it was happening. Thankfully, the sanctuary managed to hold on to, like, a couple of their giraffes because of that, but they still had to say goodbye to quite a few of them, which is kind of sad. Because, you know, they just make it a lot harder for these places to try to look after the animals that they've got and take in new ones as well. Like, obviously it is important that these places are up to standards for animal care. But, you know, when the people who are criticizing them aren't up to standards either, it's definitely not a good look. And it makes you wonder, who even are these people anyway? Yeah, I mean, animal welfare is a whole mess. I don't envy my sister's career at all. Even though I thought for a time I might want to go into something related to animals. I don't know, I feel like if I was going to do anything, I'd probably want to do something like the animal cops stuff, where, you know, to be part of, like, a registered task force that's specifically trained in transporting animals out of abusive situations. So, like, a legitimate version of what the PETA guys thought they were doing. When I've got the free time for it, I think it also might be nice to volunteer at an animal shelter at some point. It's not a feasible thing for me to do with how my life is right now, but someday I think that would be nice. Lord knows they need volunteers. Shit show? Yeah, it was an absolute shit show. I was on the edge of my seat the entire time my sister was regaling me with these stories. I was like, and then what happened? She also told me another really good story about how the sanctuary accidentally got an animal that they weren't allowed to put on display. It was some species of snowy owl, but they actually got it from one of the guys who appeared in the Tiger King documentary, you know, one of those kind of shady exotic animal resellers, which they didn't know who he was at the time. Nobody really did until that documentary came out. But the guy had a couple of these owls, and he was like, oh, I need to, you know, send them to a good place. And they were like, okay, we'll take it off your hands. And then they got it. And then they found out that they're not, like, legal to keep anywhere in America. Or, not that it wasn't legal to keep, but that they weren't allowed to display it in a zoo. I forget for what reason. There was some kind of a thing with permits. I don't know, but basically they have this one owl that's just kept in a separate enclosure away from the public that they can't do anything with, because they were like, well, we kind of got the wool pulled over our eyes by this shady dude. And, you know, that's the shitty part of working in that industry. Makes me wonder how many people knew about the exotic animal trade until Tiger King came along. Because I feel like that's something that I knew about, but that might have only been because I was watching Animal Planet when I was younger. And quite a few of the incidents on shows like Animal Cops dealt with people keeping exotic animals. And I'm not talking like, you know, lizards or something. I'm talking like tigers and bears these guys were keeping in their friggin' Texas property. Just having them. Not even under the guise of being a zoo or a sanctuary. They just had them because they wanted. Which on the one hand, I guess that's what America's all about, but on the other hand, that is a tiger, my guy. Perhaps that is a step too far in terms of personal freedom. Though the Tiger King show era was kind of fun because I feel like it brought back that time where we were connected by the big thing that was airing at the time. You know, it used to be everybody had the same TV channel, so everyone was watching the same TV shows. So when an episode of the latest popular thing came out, you know, everybody was talking about it because everybody had watched it. I mean, it's kind of that uniting cultural moment, which we don't really get those anymore because people got so many options and the content is so spread out. Even the stuff that's popular, not everyone is watching it all at the same time. So you don't often get those cultural touchstone moments anymore, but when COVID hit and everyone was inside, for some reason, we were all watching Tiger King. So it was kind of fun, even if it was sad learning about what happened to all those poor animals. Like, Jesus. Honestly, it goes to show there are just some things that should not be kept by humans. No matter how cool it might be. You know, we could fantasize about having our cool tiger best friend that lets us ride around on it, ride it into battle. But, you know, that doesn't mean it's actually feasible. Like most primates. I mean, even zoos have a hard time taking care of primates. Because they just require so much mental enrichment, or they risk going absolutely crazy. The idea that, like, a single individual would have the capabilities to offer that enrichment that not even, you know, a state-funded facility can. I think most people realize it's a fool's errand. COVID's also the reason why Breaking Bad had a resurgence? Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, when you've got nothing to do, you kind of pull out your list of, like, things people told you should watch, and then you're like, okay, what should I look at? It's like, oh, Breaking Bad, that's known as, like, one of the greatest TV shows ever. So, you know, obviously you give that a shot. Unless you're me and for some reason can't pay attention to TV shows for longer than 2 episodes. Well, except The Pit. I like The Pit. The Pit is really good. Maybe it's the fact that I'm a little bit too animation-brained. I just don't find live-action material as interesting as something that's been drawn. Which is the opposite of how most people think. I think. I don't know, I remember trying to get my parents to give animated things a shot. It was hard for them, man. They just did not connect with it on the same level that I did. Probably because TV shows nowadays are pretty lame. I don't know, I feel like we're entering an era where there is some good stuff coming out. it's like, it's this weird give and take, because with the current way things are being done, there's more options being given to more things, which means that yes, shitty stuff is, just like being produced all the time. It's all out there. But also the really good stuff that perhaps might not have been given a shot on a traditional media format is able to do its thing. I really think the big issue is access. You know? I mean, all this stuff being segmented up on different services, being charged for prices to the point where, people can't buy every streaming service. It's just not feasible. So people are always going to be choosing to miss out on something. Which means that I think a lot of stuff isn't drawing the audience that it really could. It's part of why I'm very much against exclusivity deals. I think it really hinders a lot more than it helps. It kind of stunts an art piece's growth. Oversaturation also plays a role? Yeah, that too. I mean, I also feel like the general attention span of people is taking a hit too. I feel it myself sometimes, Sometimes I feel like I can't pay attention for shit. I certainly have a better tolerance for not being constantly engaged than some people probably do, especially younger people. But I also feel like I had a better attention span, back in middle school and high school than I do now. Which is kind of weird to think about. The fact that I might actually be paying less attention. Oof. Okay, we just passed the hour mark. So I'm gonna put a pause on things for 5 minutes so I can stretch, get some water, reset a little bit, and then come back and finish up for the last hour. Alright. I'm gonna just put up a BRB screen here and let you all enjoy the sweet jams while I'm out. Too big. Alright guys, I'll be back in 5 minutes. See you then! Alright, I'm back. I have stretched. I have gotten some water. I'm ready to draw again. Oh, were you guys sad I was gone? All those little emojis. You must have missed me. Moon? Yeah, the moon emoji is very fucked up. I don't know why it looks like that. Oh, right. I remembered something I wanted to talk about. So I found this pretty interesting YouTube series today where this guy goes through games, like big open world games, and he showcases what he finds to be the most quote-unquote boring areas of the game. So it's basically just like, you know, those big empty spots of the map where, like, nothing's really happening. It's kind of just pure environment. There's not even really NPCs going on around. And he just kind of showcases them. Shows the few things he finds that he thinks are actually kind of interesting. But what I liked about the series is that it kind of emphasized that, hey, even these spots where, like, no game stuff is technically happening, these were still, like, painstakingly modeled and planned out by somebody on the team. And honestly, being in the empty zones can be kind of a vibe sometime. Like you're hanging out somewhere you're not supposed to be. Like in real life. And it made me remember how I kind of did the same thing back when I was playing Cyberpunk 2077. Because Night City is a pretty sprawling locale, and the way that it's structured, it's like buildings on top of other buildings. Like the city was kind of built upward over the years. So you get a lot of these actually very interesting nooks and crannies, even in spots where, you know, there's no actual game content to be found. It's still kind of got this very interesting and dynamic design to it, just purely from being Night City. So I remembered how I would often just, like, find myself walking down random alleyways or jumping onto random rooftops and just kind of hanging out up there. Watching the lights and the scenery. And those are honestly some of the more memorable experiences you can have in games like that. Makes you want to play the game again, but I've got other things on my to-play list right now, rather than going back and playing a game I've already beaten 3 times. Although I still haven't finished the DLC for that, so, you know, I'll go back to it at some point. Maybe wait till it's on sale on PC. I was one of those weirdos who was playing the game on launch and actually really liked it. I think a part of it was, the game kind of played better on consoles back when it first started. It was really the PC port that had a lot of the biggest issues. And also because I found out about the game like a month before it released. So I wasn't on that super long Cyberpunk hype train where I was watching all the stuff that CD Projekt Red was putting out and all the promises that they were making. So my expectations, I don't think, were nearly as high as other people's. I just basically thought I was getting another fun role-playing game. And I did. I thought it was really fun, and I kind of took it for what it was at face value. Without all the expectations, and I actually had a pretty good time. Of course, I am happy that it runs a lot better now and that people are actually able to enjoy it and recognize all the positive qualities that the game has underneath the technical limitations. really is a nice game to just exist in. You know, you could just turn on the game and sit down on a couch and listen to the radio or watch the city go by out the window. And actually get a lot of enrichment out of just doing that. It's kind of amazing. Just wait until you get into the mods? Oh yeah. Oddly enough, I had almost no issues with launch for Cyberpunk. I think you mentioned that before, yeah. I guess every issue of the game is personalized, you know, everyone gets their own random smattering of glitches. Some people get more than others. On occasion, somebody scores the lucky no bugs copy. A part of me wonders if CD Projekt Red is gonna make another one. Like a Cyberpunk sequel instead of just DLC. Another part of me wonders if they're a little traumatized from what happened. It was a pretty massive game. I'm not surprised it ended up being more trouble for them than they probably expected. It's one of those things, you know, sometimes you push the envelope, you take a risk, and it doesn't exactly work as planned. No, that doesn't look right. I know right now they're working on the next Witcher game, which will be interesting. I honestly wasn't expecting Cersei to be... or Ciri? I forget how you say her name. I think it's Cersei. Cersei to be the new main character. Because you assume The Witcher is going to be about Geralt, the titular Witcher. But apparently they're officially out of, like, book material. Like, they've gone past what the original book series had to offer. So at that point, it's kind of like, yeah, I mean, I guess you might as well change it up and do something new. If there's no more content about Geralt to write about. Maybe starting some new material with Cersei will be interesting. But it could also fall flat on its face. We'll have to see. You know? It's kind of one of those scary moments. You take off the adaptation training wheels and it's like, okay, make your own content now. While still holding true to the feelings of the original. So that's quite the challenge. A challenge that not a lot of writers are up for, it would seem, given the track record of things like Game of Thrones. I actually can't find my copy of The Witcher 3, which is sad because it had all the DLC baked into it. I bet it's probably in storage at my parents' place or something, and I'll need to go digging through their storage unit, try to find it. Which, doesn't sound very fun. Not looking forward to that, if I end up having to do it. Maybe it'll be worth it for Blood and Wine DLC. Although I struggled a lot with The Witcher, man. The combat system was difficult for me to wrap my brain around. I hit so many walls with that game. That's why I ended up putting it down in the first place, because I was like, I just can't figure this out right now. I'm tired. They kind of hindered themselves by using the red engine. Apparently they're going to be switching to UE5. So I'm a little worried about performance. Ooh, interesting. It's already in development. Oh, shit! Well, that's me, chronically out of the loop Kim. Well, I guess I'm glad it didn't scare them off of things completely. Because, you know, Cyberpunk's got a lot of worth in it. I'm happy to hear they're going back. I certainly hope it works out better than last time. And hopefully they'll pay attention to performance. Does Unreal Engine games just, like, naturally cook PCs? Does it just have, like, bad optimization in general? I don't actually know how that works or who's really in control of game optimization. I actually did a couple of projects in college in Unreal 5. I took like one game development course. It was like 3D environment design. So it was like learning how to like model objects in Maya and then put them in Unreal. Unreal actually makes for surprisingly good 3D animation software. Is what I learned from that class. But, you know, the engine always ran fine on the computers. I don't know, it could be the college just had access to some absolute beefcake equipment. Although this was Unreal Engine 4, I don't think 5 was out yet when I was in college. I think it was just coming out by the time I graduated. So yeah, we used Unreal Engine 4. 5 is in the growing pain stage. Yes, Jack, I just remembered that. How long has 5 been out? I feel like I remember watching the, like, initial trailer launch for it while I was in college, probably close to graduation. So it's been, like, less than 5 years, I'd imagine. Few years? Okay. Guess we just gotta keep holding out. The March of Progress is funny. It seems like we always fail to keep pace with it, you know? Eventually our advancements start outstripping what we can really handle and work with. Kind of like the AI stuff. Everybody was so enthralled with it, a lot of people kind of jumped in both feet first and kind of just ended up making themselves look like fools. Everybody wants to be an early adopter of the next big thing, but actually knowing what the next big thing is gonna be, I mean, I think only somebody who can see the future can do that. As someone who has worked with Unreal Engine 5 and has made a game in class with it, it's interesting to say the least. Some developers have had an easier time than others. Interesting. I wonder what the learning block is on that. What makes some people more effective at using it than others? These are the things I wish we could do research on. But I don't know how you'd even test something like that. Oh, man, it's hard drawing with a new character sometimes. It can take a little time to really get comfortable with a character's appearance and expressions and the anatomy of their face. AI just makes glossy and obvious imagery, smeary videos, and grammatically crap articles. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not like... It's definitely not the techno hellscape a lot of, like, 80s sci-fi content was predicting. It didn't come out of the gate swinging, really. Yeah, because all it can really do is, like, imitate and iterate based off input that humans have already given it. So, like, a human has to make it first before an AI can use it for anything. Which I think most people can agree isn't true creativity. I remember when the whole, like, Ghibli AI filter thing was making the rounds, like, last week. And this one YouTuber guy whose videos I actually watched on occasion, because he used to make kind of interesting videos about, like, medieval weaponry and stuff, which I thought was cool. But he came out with the wildest fucking take. And not even just the stuff about AI, but it was the fact that he thought the Ghibli art style was bland, and I'm like, what? How do you think that looks bland? Sure, it's not detailed, but that's not the same as being bland. And it was like, oh, the AI version is more better, and it's like, dude, it just has more layers of shading on it. That's not better. Like, it's three-dimensional, it's closer to photorealism, and it has shading. That doesn't actually make it better. I don't know, that just shows me that the guy definitely is an art normie. You know? Because I think that's how most people feel about art. They judge it on how well it imitates reality. Not understanding that not all art is trying to do that. Hell, animation specifically. As much as, you know, animators talk about imitating life through movement, animation doesn't actually imitate life. It imitates, like a hyper-real version of it. It emphasizes the inherent qualities of movement and figures that our brain understands. But because it plays a little more loose with it, it's able to take that sort of innate understanding our brains have of something and, like, elevate it. It's able to go past reality into something that feels believable, But, you know, when you look at it, if you were to compare it to, like, you know, the actual object moving in space, it doesn't match reality at all. But it feels real. Somehow it feels more real than the live footage, which is insane to me that it can do that. Side note, I feel like this pose has big Borzoi energy. Long face. Yeah, the painted look is really nice. It is nice that Ghibli have managed to keep that same feel with the artwork, even though they've switched over to, like, digital like everybody else now. There is a certain quality that comes with traditional cell painting that you can't quite replicate on digital media no matter how hard you try. But you can get pretty dang close, and I feel like Ghibli gets pretty dang close. I mean, their most recent film, The Boy and the Heron, was gorgeous looking. Looks like the tired dude sitting at the computer meme. Yeah. That's such a great reaction image. That's from another great animated film, man. Coraline is so good. There's a ton of people out there that were, like, traumatized by stop motion films when they were younger. I was not one of them. I've never thought stop motion looked scary. I did think it looked really cool and creepy sometimes. And Coraline is like that sort of like quintessential scary stop motion film for most people, I think. But yeah, that shot of the dad at the computer, it's just like, what a great piece of like character animation. You understand so much about that man immediately upon eye contact. You get him. You get his vibe. You get his struggles. See, that's what good animation does. It expresses something beyond reality. Like, nothing about how that man looks or was sitting was realistic, but the emotion behind it was real. You understood the way that man was feeling immediately. AI is good at emulating things, but it can't think for itself. Therefore, it has no capacity for creativity. Exactly. It can't truly think. I guess that just goes to show that there really is a difference between learning and thinking. Being able to memorize and then recite information is one thing. Being able to actually, you know, iterate on that knowledge that you've learned to make something new, whether that's a new idea or a new work of art, that's a completely different task altogether. And that's probably why, at least in my schooling, English class usually included lessons on creative thinking. So like teaching you to think outside of the box, to look at things and analyze them from other perspectives, and try to come to conclusions about things, rather than just knowing facts about them, and being able to recite those over and over onto a test paper. It was critical thinking, that's what it was called. God. Stop motion Lego YouTube was a different time. Ah, those videos were good too. I still get Lego videos on occasion, but it's mostly like, you know, time lapses of actual Lego builds. Which are cool, but yeah, it's definitely not quite the same as like people doing stop motion sets. Little skits with their guys. One of my younger cousins is kind of keeping the tradition alive. He runs a YouTube channel where he does stop motion shorts using his Thomas the Tank Engine toys. So not the same subject, but kind of along similar lines there. Alright, this one calls for a perspective grid. Makes me wonder if someday we'll get those actual thinking AIs. Though I don't know if a computer code would ever really be able to replicate that process. I mean, do we even really understand it ourselves, how we think? Composition. Oh, man, my fingers hurt. System Shock has turned me off from the idea of a free-thinking AI. Yeah, I think most sci-fi stories are pretty against the idea of creating an AI that can think for itself. Quantum computing, maybe? With current tech, it would consume too much power. Well, I'm sure we'll surpass that limitation too someday. That seems to be what we're really good at as a species. Going even further beyond and all that. Not quite looking in the right spot. Looks better. That's partly why modern CPUs are just getting bigger. We can't make the transistors any smaller. Well, I can tell I'm hitting my wall because my body's telling me to stop. It's like, I can't do it anymore. I think I mentioned this last stream, but drawing is a lot more exhaustive than it might first seem. I mean, usually by the end of any drawing session, my hands are tired, my brain is tired. It takes a surprising amount of mental energy to do this for long periods. It requires a lot of focus, brain fried. Yeah, brain pretty fried right now. But I want to keep going just a little bit longer. I made this fox character with a lot of very round features. Just trying to make her look very soft and fluffy. Something that just screams motherly. Can't believe I keep forgetting about her copious amounts of neck fluff. That's like the most important design element. You know what turned out to be surprisingly good that I was not expecting to be good? That Netflix Jurassic Park TV show. Like, it's had, like, surprisingly good storytelling and character work and visual design. The animation looks kind of stilted and stiff sometimes. But, I mean, every scene is modeled and textured and lit fantastically, so that kind of makes up for it. But yeah, that was a little gem I was very surprised to find. I was like, wait, is this actually entertaining? Completely unexpected. Mm. Quick stretch. Whew. The great part about these copyright-free playlists is that they're always like 12 hours long. So you don't have to worry about trying to find something new to play in the middle of what I was doing. So you can also tell I'm reaching the end of my rope because I'm not talking as much anymore. Oh well, last thing I want to do is try to force unnecessary conversation on these streams. I mean, this is also meant to be nice, you know, background content, stuff you're not really paying attention to. Of course, I appreciate those of you who, you know, are completely enraptured by my art. Can't even bear to look at your video games because what's going on screen is just too interesting. I mean, speaking on the webcomic itself a little bit, we did just pass 1,700 subscribers, which is very cool. I've got almost 2,000 people who want to see this thing on a regular basis. That's kind of crazy. Okay, I think that's a decent stopping point for right now. Unnecessary. No, you guys aren't unnecessary. Alright, we have reached the 2-hour mark. That's gonna be it for today. Thank you all very much for joining me this week. Hopefully I'll be back with another stream next Monday. Although if I do end up starting this new job, that might end up changing the schedule. I'll post something on the channel if that's the case. If you want to see more of me, I've got links down in the description to my other social medias where I'm posting more artwork, links to the webcomic itself, so you guys can read that if you want. I'd highly recommend it. You can join the almost 2,000 people who are reading it on a regular basis at this point. If you want to see more streams from me, I do gaming streams on the weekend. This Saturday, I'm going to be on my friend the Violet Howler's channel. We're going to be finishing up our playthrough of Kingdom Hearts 1, so you can come hang out with us for that if you'd like. And then the Saturday after that, I'll be back on this channel doing an Okami livestream with my brother, Shadow Polkia. So, until next time, guys, I'll see you around.